Hello, today is Wednesday, April 20th, 2022. My name is Abigail Hayden. I'm interviewing Anissa Hirle for the South Texas Archives at Texas A&M University, Kingsville. This is a part of the Voces of a Pandemic Oral History Project in partnership with the Voces Oral History Center at the University of Texas at Austin. Please know Miss Anissa Hirle that this recorded interview will be placed in the South Texas Archives at Texas A&M University, Kingsville, and shared with the Voces Oral History Center at the University of Texas at Austin. If there is anything you do not wish to answer or talk about, especially given that your recording may appear online, I will honor your wishes. Also, if there is something you want to talk about, please bring it up and we will talk about it. Because we are not conducting this interview in person, I need to record you consenting. So I'll ask you a series of 6 questions. Please say, yes, I agree, or no, I do not agree after each one. There are 4 questions we need to make sure you agree to before we go on. South Texas Archives at Texas A&M University, Kingsville wishes to archive your interview, along with any other photographs and other documentation at the South Texas Archives at Texas A&M University, Kingsville. We will retain copyright of the interview and any other materials you donate to the South Texas Archives at Texas A&M University, Kingsville. 1. Do you give us consent to archive your interview and your materials at the Jernigan Library at Texas A&M University, Kingsville?
Yes, I agree.
Do you grant South Texas Archives at the Jernigan Library at Texas A&M Kingsville University copyright over the interview and any other material you provide?
Yes, I agree.
Do you agree to allow South Texas Archives at the Jernigan Library at Texas A&M University, Kingsville to post this interview on the internet where it may be viewed by people around the world?
Yes, I agree.
Do you grant South Texas Archives at the Jernigan Library at Texas A&M University, Kingsville consent to share your interview and your materials with the Voces Oral History Center at the University of Texas at Austin for inclusion in the Voces of a Pandemic Oral History Project, which
Yes.
will include posting the interview on the internet?
Yes, I agree.
We have many questions in a pre-interview form that we have already filled out. We use that information from the pre-interview form to help in research. The entire form is kept in a secure Voces server at the University of Texas at Austin. The final storing of the pre-interview form will be at the South Texas Archives at the Jernigan Library at Texas A&M University, Kingsville. We will have stripped out any contact information for yourself or for family members, so that information will not be a part of your public file. Your public file will only be accessible at the Jernigan Library. Do you wish for us to share the rest of your interview in your public file available to researchers at the South Texas Archives at the Jernigan Library at Texas A&M University, Kingsville?
Yes, I agree.
On occasion, Voces receives requests from journalists who wish to contact our interview subjects. We only deal with legitimate news outlets. Do you give us consent for us to share your phone numbers or your email with journalists?
Yes, I agree.
Great. Okay. So the Oral History Project Voices of Pandemic mainly focuses on how do Latinos describe their experiences during COVID-19. The goal for this interview project is for viewers to gain a greater appreciation of the experiences of the Latino community during this historic time. Please share your story with us now, as I am about to ask a series of questions about your time in the pandemic and what you experienced. So if you don't mind, please tell me a little bit about your experience with COVID-19.
Okay, so I was a college freshman when COVID-19 first was like, oh, there's a new disease going around. This is like January 2020, second semester of college. Me and my friends did not take it seriously at all. And then when spring break came around, we saw it as an extra week of spring break. That's gonna be so much fun. And so we all planned a trip to go down to the valley to go party. And then it got very serious. And when it got serious, I was in Houston and the city basically shut down overnight. And then 2 weeks of spring break turned into actually no more classes at college the rest of the semester. It was very much a shock to all of us because it was our first bite of freedom and it's just been taken away from us. And there are so many restrictions being put into place where we couldn't do the things we were used to doing. So it was very much just shocking to everyone involved. And shocking that people were dying from it too, because we're kids. We were kids basically. We didn't think anything bad could happen to us.
Okay, so how did you first learn about COVID-19?
I first learned about COVID-19, I want to say January 2019, not January, December 2019, when there was a situation out in China where some situation with a bat, I cannot remember for the life of me, and people started joking about it, the whole disease from the bats. And then January 2019, it started to get a little more serious. And in February, there is reports I was already in the US or was going to be in the US sometime soon. In mid-February, I had to go to the hospital because I had the flu. They also tested me for COVID-19 there. So I was like, this is a wee bit more serious than we expected. And then there was talk that it was going to peak around spring break time, which it did. And that caused our school to shut down for the rest of the semester.
Okay, so would you say at that point, right after spring break, was that when you realized, okay, this is really serious, this is not just an extra week of spring break, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It was
go ahead.
it was very scary since we didn't take it seriously at all until the week after spring break, our second week of spring break technically, when people started getting more sick, the masks started coming out, and the world essentially went on lockdown. That's what we said. Oh man, this probably isn't all fun and games anymore.
Right. Okay. So could you tell me how exactly has COVID-19 impacted you? How has it changed your family's life, your friends, just your daily life? Like, what was probably the most the most area of your life where it impacted you?
I think the part that has been affected the most is just my relationship with others, like my romantic relationship, my friendship with others. Since COVID-19 isolated us for such a long time, no one really knew how to act with each other when we did come together again. And so all those relationships I have formed over quarantine, which was strictly over my phone, over social media, over FaceTime, when those relationships became real life and I could see them face to face, it was such a weird difference. And plus seeing everyone with their masks on, you don't see a full person, you just see their eyes up. So you only see partially this person, which you're not really seeing their full you're not seeing their full self. And when the mask comes off, it was just a wee bit weird. And just also relationships and friendships in school, because I've only known those people online for the past 6 months, and now I'm seeing them in class. It was really what's the word? Shock?
Culture shock?
Yes, culture shock. Thank you.
Yes. So how is going out into the world during COVID-19 different from pre-COVID? Like, what were some things that you realized you can't really do anymore now that COVID has come around?
Going to the grocery store. Me and my friends used to always go in the middle of the night to get stuff for our dorms, or just to go hang out at the Walmart at 2 a.m. And when COVID hit, those restrictions were put in and Walmart closed at 7. We're like, what do we do for the rest of the night? We can't go out. And if we were to go out, we had to wear masks, and we would have to sanitize everything we touch. We had to sanitize our hands. And going out within the first month of COVID to the grocery store with my parents was so weird, because everyone there was just stocking up. There was no toilet paper. basically no meat. And everything you think you need was gone. So it was very surprising how much people acted like the world was ending when it kind of was.
So, how, if at all, has COVID impacted your ability to gather with your family and friends? You mentioned like now you had to wear masks, now you had to sanitize everything. You also mentioned like how most of your friendship and your interactions were just online, but when there was like a face to face, how was that? Was it how different was it?
When it came to my family, Easter was like a month after everything basically shut down. And we had to cancel Easter the first time since my grandma died, basically. So 9-ish years, 8 years. And it was very sad because my family, we're very close. We're very tight knit. So not being able to see my aunts and my uncles for Easter really, really hurt. And then at home, it was just me, my parents, my brother, and my sister would come occasionally. But when my sister would come, she would have to quarantine in her own room for however many days she was there. So we didn't have any interaction with my sister, any physical interaction with my sister, unless she was staying longer with us for more than 2 weeks so she could fully quarantine. And it just hurt seeing my sister on the other side of the room. Can't hug her, can't do anything with her. She had to wear a mask the whole time. She couldn't eat dinner with us. It just hurt. Like she was so close yet so far away. And that's the part for me that hurt the most, just being so close yet so far away. I couldn't see any of my grandparents. My only living grandparent, couldn't see him because he is autoimmune. He has an autoimmune disease, which he was high risk for. When I could go back to school in the fall, I was very selective with who I would hang out with. If I knew they were being safe, I would only hang out with them. I barely hung out with anyone new. And I would always wear a mask wherever I went. And when I see my friends without a mask, it just freaked me out because some of them were very much, oh, this thing isn't real. So those friendships ended very quickly. It just hurt seeing being I'm gonna keep going back to it. It hurt being so close yet so far from someone who you want to be with.
Of course, that was a common experience. I think almost everyone felt like that. So has that, since COVID has been going on for 2 years now, has that changed your point of view? Like when you do go home and you do see your family and then you come back to school, like do you feel like more appreciative that you got that time with them, or does it sort of just like, oh, like how did that change?
I think when I was first at home, when COVID first happened, I was very much bitter being home, even though I should have been grateful, because based essentially all my freedom of being in college, being a little 19-year-old freshman was taken away from me. I had to stay at home. I couldn't do anything. I didn't have friends at home where we could go out at 3 a.m. anymore. And I was very bitter for the first couple months. And then I realized some people don't have the luxury I have to stay with my parents, to be at home with my parents during this tough, difficult time. And so when I would start going back home, being in college, I would appreciate a little bit more because a lot of people couldn't afford that luxury that I had of going home every couple of weekends to see their parents, to spend time with their parents. And eventually over time, I did become more grateful for the time I did spend with them.
Okay, so you did mention how you were really selective with your friends who were wearing masks. How did you feel about masks when they first started coming out? Did you feel like, oh, like why, like, did you understand why we had to wear, why the restrictions were put in place? Were you resistive, or were you just more accepting of it, or did you understand?
I think like the very first day, because the very first day for me when everything started happening was March 13th, 2020. And that was the day I was in Houston. That first day when I was in Houston, I saw a lot of people wearing masks, and I was very much under the impression that masks really didn't do anything for us, because that was all the information we were told at the time. And so I really didn't see the point of it until like maybe 2 weeks later when the CDC started saying, yeah, masks are actually really effective against them. So we started wearing masks all the time. No matter where we went, me and my family will always wear masks. And we're always very accepting of the mask mandates, mask rules. Like even when they were lifted in Texas last March, I believe, we always wear them still. No matter where, we would always wear them. But yeah, we were very accepting. And then when they did come out, we were the type to walk in a store and argue with someone who wanted us to wear a mask. But getting masks was a very hard process because a lot of the medical grade ones were being sold out and being sold at a way higher price.
Okay, so following that, you of course mentioned like you had to stop going to school once COVID first hit, you went back home. So can you tell me like how was that? How was having to do school essentially online, having to do that transition? How did it impact you?
Oh my. Transitioning from, I'm just gonna go by semester. So like spring 2020, abruptly getting put online hurt me so severely when it comes to my grades. I barely passed any of my classes when it came to it. And when I was home, I had no motivation to do any of the work. And what didn't help was none of my teachers would communicate with us. They essentially said, figure it out on your own, when we were all in this situation. It was a very scary situation for the first time all together. So my grades really did fall behind, which is why I'm considered a sophomore when I should be a junior. And in fall 2020, the transition of like, oh, some classes are online, but some of them are in person, really messed me up too, because it was hard regulating them and finding time for the balance between online classes and in-person classes. But then if they're in person, all the work was online, but they're online, you had to go to a certain professor on this day, once a month. It was very weird, and my grades did suffer from it still. And then same thing in spring 2020, half of my classes were online. We're still trying to figure out what in-person classes work for everybody. And a lot of online classes did work for me, but I just had no motivation to do any of the work. I always did my work last minute. I always put off assignments to the very last day. And for my in-person work, I sometimes just wouldn't even go to class because I could do it online. Just hop on a Zoom and take it from home. It became very hard for me to find motivation. It's still very hard for me to find motivation to do my schoolwork since I was so used to just rolling out of bed, turning my laptop, putting on the assignment, or putting the class, and falling back to sleep. Like, I truly had no motivation to do any of the work because nothing felt real in the time either. Like, to me, excuse me, it felt like this was gonna go away in a month or two, and it didn't. So my mental state was very much, excuse me again, God, was very much skewed. It had a skewed perception of everything. So while I am still trying to find that balance between online work and in-person work, it was extremely tough for me it's been extremely tough for me the past 2 years to figure out that right rhythm to get my work done.
Okay, so do you think that as a school, did your university provide you resources? How do I word this? As a school, did Texas A&M University provide you resources to help you succeed? Did you see anyone, because of course there are some people who didn't have like laptops, computers, etc. Did you see them? Was there an opportunity to get like a borrowed laptop like some high schools did, or do you know of any of like these types of resources to just help people during this online transition?
I know there was resources available. Like I know, for example, the library did stay open, so anyone who was on campus or in the area could do their work there at the library for free. But I do not know if we did have any borrowed laptop services. because I am fortunate to have my own laptop. But we would hear about these programs one time and then nothing. No one would talk about the counseling services they had, even though we did have them during this time, because we were told about them once and then nothing else. We were told about all these numerous programs that could help us one time. And like a lot of people did have foggy brain during this time. So it didn't register in our heads basically that these resources were available to us. So I believe that's why a lot of them went unused and unnoticed, was because we were told about them once during the worst time in anyone's life. But I really do wish they were more well broadcasted, because if they did have counseling services and tutoring services available during this time, I would have used those up so I could at least pass, and maybe I would have been a bit more ahead than what I am now if they were broadcasting more.
Okay, that's understandable. So, moving forward, there's been a lot of talk about the vaccination. Even now, we're still 2 years into we're over 2 years into the pandemic now. And there's still debates about the vaccination. Have you been vaccinated?
I have been vaccinated since March 2021 with the Moderna vaccine, and got vaccinated March 2021, April 2021, and then I got my booster shot this past December.
Okay, so can you describe the process of getting it scheduled? Was it difficult for you? Was it easy? Or was it sort of just like, if you like, you're lucky if you find it, or just how was that for you?
It was very easy for me to schedule it since A&M Kingsville did have an email that got sent out saying, hey, the city of Kingsville is offering these free vaccines at this location at this time. You would have to register for it. And the registration process was very easy. I did it within like 5 minutes, scheduled it for the very next day, went, and I've been vaccinated ever since. Same thing with my second dose, and same thing with my booster. It was very readily available to find them in such a small town, which I feel like is a luxury compared to other places. Like, for example, in New York, you could be lucky to find one. But I'm very grateful that in this small town, they were readily available for everyone and anyone who did want one.
Okay, so sort of tying into that, what kind of concerns or questions regarding healthcare during COVID? Like, obviously, we saw a lot of people were in the hospital, a lot of people got sick, and most of these people didn't even have insurance. So how was your experience with your healthcare and the emergency that basically resulted from COVID? Like, how was that experience for you?
I am very grateful and thankful that nothing major had happened to my family, in which we needed to go to the hospital during the time of COVID. But there was a situation with my sister who had to stay in an emergency clinic overnight because she was that scared to go to a doctor, because of all the cases. This is May 2020, actually. She had to stay overnight in an urgent care for an abscess on her side. And she did not want to go to the hospital at all because she was that scared of that many COVID cases. But I believe with all the COVID cases that are happening, that people without insurance should still have any right to see a doctor than someone with insurance does. Like, healthcare should be universal at this point. It is very shocking that we do not have it, but that is not here nor there. I just think with everything going on, we got free vaccines. The healthcare that is needed because of COVID should also be free as well. And I am very grateful that the insurance I do have is very full coverage, and I don't have to worry about it. But the person next door could not have the same situation I do. So it should just be something that is readily available that anyone can get, no matter who you are, what race you are, what gender you are, whatever you are. healthcare should be universal.
So, of course, earlier I did mention like there's been a lot of debates about masks, of course, the vaccine, and a lot of people believe that COVID has essentially been politicized when during like a difficult time in people's lives, it's become very politicized. Do you believe that politics has essentially affected how COVID was handled, or do you think there are two different things?
I think with it basically all started with when COVID-19 was first announced. It brought out a lot of racism and xenophobia when it did come to people from different countries. People from different countries are coming to the United States because the places they were from were so bad with COVID-19, they thought maybe the Americas could be better. And that even started like January 2020 because people did not even think this was real. They started calling it like the Wu-Tang Virus, I believe, or something along those lines that was very much anti, all that. And then when it did happen, the people who didn't believe it was real started saying, oh, we don't need masks because this isn't real. Then when it started getting a little bit more serious and talks of mask mandates started coming into play, they're like, we won't follow a mandate because we don't even believe in this stuff. And then eventually when they did come have COVID, because everyone was going to get COVID who didn't wear masks, frankly. They started saying how masks were like causing them respiratory issues and how they had medical exemption cards, so it makes it seem like they can't wear masks, even though if you need an exemption to wear a mask, you should be wearing the mask the most. But it did become very politicized within it being discovered as a virus. And when vaccines started happening, they started the debate whether this is too soon. They've been planning this. And even though coronavirus has been around for a long time, they've been planning the coronavirus vaccine. It became very politicized because our president at the time he said a lot of racist things regarding the virus and where it came from. And his followers were the ones mainly spouting all of this very much unintelligence and unresearched advice, quote unquote. It very much became a political issue off the bat. And it was going to stay a political issue. And it's going to still be a political issue. Because no matter what you do, where you get vaccinated, you don't get vaccinated, someone is going to argue with you, even if your decision is a right decision. But I believe with the removal of that man from office, that it slowly became a bit better to say, oh, I'm vaccinated without having someone beside you yell at you for it, even though people will still yell at you for it. It is a very slippery slope, to say the least, when it comes to the virus itself being political, the mask being political, the vaccine being political. Even Jack Harlow said the vaccine was political, when it shouldn't be. It should just be a way to keep everyone around you safe. It shouldn't be a matter of this or that, left or right. It should just be a resource. I don't know why it's being politicized. It should not be politicized.
Okay, so did you notice that COVID affected politics in your own area, your own state? And how was that? How was going through that? Was that also shocking, or was it sort of like
It definitely came out of left field? Well, it shouldn't have for me, but it definitely came out of left field because living in Texas my entire life, you see the people who you're surrounded by in their politics. And when Texas announced that they were having a mask mandate, a lot of people lost their minds. And those people were the people who heavily followed our president at the time. And they were mad at our current, they are still mad at our current administration, the Texas administration, for putting in those mask mandates. And a lot of people did not follow them, even though they're mandates, mandatory reasons. And especially a lot of people in my hometown did not agree with the masks. Even some of my family friends did not agree with the masks, but they still wore them because it was mandated. It was technically the law. And when our governor decided to lift the mask mandates, everyone lost their minds. It was like, we won, when they really did not win. It just became a little bit more, what's the word? When the mask mandate was lifted in March 2021, I seriously did not expect it, because Texas was at the time when this did happen. In March 2021, we did have the most recorded number of cases. And afterwards, those cases started rising because why? The mask mandate got lifted. It was very shocking to see that people were like, why are cases rising? Why do you think? It was the same people who wanted the mask mandate to lift that were asking, why are cases rising? It was so weird, but not that unheard of, maybe is a word. It wasn't out of left field for Texas to hate masks and to hate the vaccines, apparently, non-Texans, because we are a very Republican state, and it was mainly a lot of Republicans saying that they did not want the mask, they didn't want the mandate. They were so happy when the mandate lifted, but when cases started rising, that's when they had an issue with it, because everything was going to shut down again. We're not going to have spring break anymore. Maybe if they wore a mask, we would have all these things still, you know?
Yes. So, moving on from that, I have a few questions about how COVID impacted your work. When COVID, if any, when COVID first started, did you have a job or?
No, I did not.
Okay. During any time in the pandemic, did you try to get a job, or did you have any job? How was that?
During the pandemic, during like the school year of like 2020, 2021, I tried so desperately to get a job on campus and just to get a job somewhere within walking distance, because I don't have a farm. But having all these restrictions and everything, there could only be a certain amount of people in a room at one time. It was very difficult to find a job on campus. But then this year, I was fortunate to actually find a job on campus. But it was still very limited in what we could do. We had to wear masks. Our company mandated for us to wear masks all the time. So we always had to wear masks. We couldn't do certain things with customers that we used to do. And we there's going to be like 2 people in a room max if I run the break room, because that's what our company allowed us. So it was still, there are still rules in place, but it was for our safety. And I am grateful for that. It was September, August 2021, and in which cases were slowing down, but they were about to start rising again because school was back in session. But I am very grateful that my job did put in those restrictions, because more people in a room freaks me out. So one was there for our safety. I'm very glad it was, because I'm a very anxious person when it comes to other people.
Okay, so following that, how, if at all, have the current social movements in conjunction with COVID-19 impacted your daily life? These social movements include Black Lives Matter, the Me Too movement. A lot of these protests we've seen occurring during COVID-19. Were you a part of any of these, or has that impacted you? Can you describe your experience with that for me?
When COVID first happened, the 2020 and the middle of 2020, George Floyd was brutally murdered, and George Floyd was an alumnus of A&M Kingsville. So when he died, it was a very hard hit for our university. So when those protests started happening in, say, Corpus Christi, a lot of people I went to school with did go there. But I unfortunately could not attend any of the rallies since parents would have killed me, first off, because they did not see eye to eye on me in those situations. And since I did not have a car at the time, I just couldn't go. And plus, I did not feel comfortable being around that many people in a small setting. So as much as I wished I could go, I really couldn't. But then when school started happening, we did have a little small gathering for George Floyd for his birthday. And it was very beautiful. And it was in, not retaliation, but in celebration of his life for this life that was taken away from him so brutally and abruptly. But as much as I wish I could attend those rallies and could attend the protest, I really couldn't. But I did support all that on social media. I still support all of it on social media. I do donate when I can to the George Floyd Foundation. So I couldn't attend actual rallies, but I do participate in online.
Okay, that's great. That's really good. So, before we finish today, I do want to ask, is there anything else that you want to share with me about your experience is there anything else that you would like to share with me about your experiences with COVID-19 that I have not asked about? You can say whatever you'd like. If there's a story you have that you didn't talk about, just anything that you want to say, please say it now if there's anything that wasn't covered through all the questions.
I'll talk about a few things if you don't mind. But when COVID started first happening, people were very much joking about dying from COVID. And they were very joking if they were to get COVID, like, oh, it's not gonna happen to me. I'm this and this and that. But then they would get COVID and they would see that like the actual truth, how it sucks and how it is very dangerous. And I think that's one thing we as a society, and especially like teenagers and young adults have strayed away from, is that COVID is still a very deadly disease. If you get it, if you are vaccinated, you could die from it. And as much as life has returned back to the normal we are used to, it truly will never be normal because we are always, well, as of right now, we are constantly at risk for COVID-19. And people are still dying from it. Like, I had a family friend pass away from COVID in August 2021. And it was very much a shock to everyone because he was a healthy man. He was a healthy 46-year-old man, no problems, no conditions. He got COVID-19 and a couple days later, he was dead. And it really hurt my family or his family because he was basically my uncle. But people still joke about getting COVID-19 and they do not take it seriously still. And just how many more people have to suffer and die for y'all to realize it isn't a joke, that we have all these precautions in place for our safety and for the safety of others that are necessary. But people just refuse to follow or neglect to follow because they are young and they are naive. Another topic. With the rise of COVID-19 and the staying home during lockdown and quarantine, there was a rise in domestic violence cases against women and children and men, because men are a victim of domestic violence as well, but they are not talked about as often because bad things happen to men all the time. People just refuse to talk about it. There's a rise of cases in that, which I think is swept under the rug so easily. Like, I'm a criminology major. Crime is what I do, is what I'm going to go into. And seeing a lot of people die from domestic violence cases during lockdown was so shocking. And then the refusal coverage of it. The lack of coverage too. Like, women and men and children were forced to stay at home with their abusers, and then they would die. People were like, oh, how could this happen? They were forced to stay home with their abusers. And when they couldn't get help because everything was shut down. I'm trying to think more things to talk about. The rise, the rise of social medias like TikTok during this time was so weird. And how it basically kind of sprung this generation into a buying binge and over consumerism. Because they couldn't go out, they would order online, and when they would order online, they would over consume, which is doing worse for our planet. It is killing our planet. Our planet is slowly dying. There is nothing being done about climate change. There's a lot of things that COVID emphasized, like domestic violence, domestic violence, like children, their only meal being from school, and how they didn't have that anymore. How diseases can easily take away life, how nothing is ever guaranteed. Your freshman year of college is not guaranteed. It was very shocking. And it destroyed my mental health. And my mental health was at its highest during quarantine, but then it was at its lowest. It fluctuated so much because of it. And no one really talks about that, especially within the Latino community, because we're very much don't ask, don't tell. That's the wrong thing. That's military. You just don't talk about it. And I had a conversation with mental health within the Latino community should be talked about more often, especially young Latinos, because quarantine and COVID took its toll. It was crazy. And so, yeah.
Okay, so first of all, thank you so much for agreeing to talk with me today and share your experiences with COVID and COVID-19. And just please stay safe out there. I know that it's COVID's kind of starting to fizzle out, but it's still there. Like, we're still 2 years in the pandemic. A lot of people are still worried, and I do hope the best for you. Thank you again so much for talking with me today, and thank you for agreeing to participate in this oral history project.
Thank you.
Thank you.